I think hopefully, is that a little bit clearer than yesterday or the last time I was here? I think it's actually a matter of the distance from the camera to the table. So, that's as close as I can get it and still have it come in clear. So, let's talk about motor nuclei. Okay? So we have motor nuclei. We know that there are cranial nerves that only have motor function. And then we also know that there are mixed cranial nerves that also have a motor function. Okay, so in thinking about this, there's going to be four cranial nerves above the pons, 4 in the pons, and 4 below the pons. Okay, the cranial nerve number 1 and cranial nerve number 2 do not have nuclei in the brainstem proper. Okay, so we're going to start with cranial nerve number 3 and work our way down. If you remember, let's go ahead and draw. For the purpose of this, I'm going to put my nuclei. All the nuclei that I put in are going to be present bilaterally, so I'm going to draw them in bilaterally right now. Okay. First cranial nerve that we talked about comes out at the level of the midbrain, at the level of the superior colliculus, and that nucleus is going to be right here in the midbrain, and that's the nucleus for cranial nerve number 3. It's the motor nucleus, the voluntary motor for cranial nerve number 3. Does anyone know what that one nucleus is called? That's your oculomotor nucleus. Okay, your oculomotor nucleus is going to do all the voluntary motor activity associated with cranial nerve number 3. Can somebody tell me a voluntary motor activity associated with cranial nerve number 3? Sorry? Opening, so levator palpebrae, right? Innervates levator palpebrae. Yes, levator palpebrae. Okay, levator palpebrae is going to be responsible for opening your eyelid. And then there's one more big voluntary motor function. Go ahead, Sydney.
So when you ask like the motor function of cranial nerve 3, like if we say that one of the functions is opening your eyelid, is that wrong? Like, do we need to say that it innervates the levator palpebrae? Like,
Yeah.
say it that way instead of.
It doesn't matter to me which way you say it. You need to know that levator palpebrae is a muscle that opens your eye, and that muscle is innervated by cranial nerve number 3. Okay. What other functions, motor functions, voluntary motor functions, does cranial nerve 3 have? Yep. Majority. Okay, majority of extraocular eye muscles. Okay, and that's cranial nerve number 3. Cranial nerve number 3 will use this oculomotor nucleus to do those activities. We also talked about some parasympathetic functions that cranial nerve number 3 has, and those are, okay, they use a different nucleus, and now I'm going to draw that nucleus in green. So just above, on top of the oculomotor nucleus, it's going to be another nucleus that is responsible for those parasympathetic functions for cranial nerve number 3 that we talked about before. The name of this nucleus is Edinger-Westphal. Edinger. Westphal is Westphal. That's the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. Edinger-Westphal nucleus is going to be the nucleus that cranial nerve number 3 uses for its parasympathetic functions. And those include pupillary constriction, And then the other one is lens accommodation.
Pupillary what?
Constriction, pupillary constriction, and lens accommodation. Okay, so these are just the basic functions of the cranial nerves that we talked about Tuesday. Okay, and cranial nerve number 3, all the functions are levator palpebrae, innervation, majority of extraocular eye muscles, pupillary constriction, and lens accommodation. And today I'm trying to show you that the ocular motor nucleus is responsible for majority of extraocular eye muscles and levator palpebrae. Yes, Chase?
What was the name of the...
Edinger-Westphal. Edingerwestphal nucleus. And the Edinger-Westphal, cranial nerve number 3 uses the Edinger-Westphal nucleus for the parasympathetic functions of lens accommodation and pupillary constriction. Okay. All right. Underneath ocular motor nucleus, that's cranial nerve number 3. Cranial nerve number 4 uses its own nucleus here, still in the midbrain. Okay. Cranial nerve number 4 uses its nucleus for motor function. Okay, and that's the trochlear nucleus. Does anybody remember the motor function for cranial nerve number 4?
Superior oblique muscle.
Superior oblique, perfect. That's its only job in life, is to innervate the superior oblique muscle. Brings your eye down and in.
And that's for cranial nerve number 4.
That's cranial nerve number 4, and we'll get there. But right now, these are just the nuclei.
Okay.
All we're doing is just don't. The kind of the point is going to be that there are a lot of different nuclei you need to know, and a lot of different cranial nerves that use that individual nuclei for their function. Okay. Trochlear, cranial nerve number 4, only has one associated with it, and that's the trochlear nucleus. So it has its own nucleus just for that cranial nerve.
So don't write cranial nerves right now.
Not yet.
Just
Nope.
leave them out.
Just leave them out. Yep. Yeah, we'll get there. This is just the beginning. I'm just trying to introduce you to all the nuclei that are in the brain stem. Okay. All right, moving on down. So that's 3 and that's 4, and number 5 is going to be here. The trigeminal nerve has a little bit of motor function associated with it, and it's going to use this motor nucleus. This is known as the motor nucleus of trigeminal. And what's the motor function for trigeminal? Does anybody remember? What?
Mastication.
Muscles of mastication. Yes. Okay, moving on down to the next motor nucleus. The next motor nucleus is going to be something that the 6th cranial nerve uses exclusively. It's going to be situated right here, most medial, and that's the abducens nucleus. Okay, cranial nerve 6 has its very own nucleus. It has one job in life. What muscle does it innervate? Perfect. Lateral rectus. Okay, next is going to be motor nucleus that the facial nerve uses for its motor function. And And this is your facial nucleus. Cranial nerve number 7 uses the facial nucleus for its voluntary motor functions. What motor functions does 7 have? Yeah, muscles of facial expression.
Blinking. Or that.
That's muscles of facial expression. That's all under that category. And then there's the smallest muscle in the human body that everybody always forgets about. Stapedius. Yeah. So cranial nerve number 7, muscles of facial expression, and stapedius. And it uses the facial nucleus for those functions. And I'm going to switch over to a black color here. Because there's some, we had chosen black when it had to do with glandular activity, and the facial nucleus uses a specific, the facial nerve uses a specific motor nucleus, which is going to be here. Okay, this is the superior salivatory nucleus. Okay, your superior salivatory nucleus. What glandular functions does cranial nerve number 7 innervate? Does anyone remember? Sublingual? Yeah, so it's going to be salivary glands of sublingual, submandibular, and one more that doesn't have to do with salivation necessarily. Lacrimal, yeah, and lacrimal. But even though it doesn't have to do with salivation, cranial nerve number 7 uses the superior salivatory nucleus to accomplish this function. Okay, next motor. Yes?
It's just sublingual, submandibular, and lacrimal.
Yeah, submandibular, so same as, no different than what we talked about. These are the functions for the cranial nerve, and this is the nucleus that it uses for those functions. So cranial nerve 8 is purely sensory, so we're not going to fuss with that one, but cranial nerve number 9 has some motor activity as well. And we'll stick with black because right under the superior salivatory nucleus, cranial nerve 9 uses the inferior salivatory nucleus to accomplish its salivation function. That's the inferior salivatory nucleus. Okay, cranial nerve number 9. Which gland does it innervate? Anybody remember? That's parotid, right. Okay, so the inferior salivatory nucleus is the nucleus cranial nerve number 9 uses to innervate the parotid gland. Cranial nerve number 9 also has a small motor function. Remember, it's mostly sensory, but it also has a small motor function, and it uses this nucleus here. I'll draw it in red, and I like to remember it by saying it doesn't know who it belongs to. It's the nucleus ambiguous. Nucleus ambiguous, and nucleus ambiguous is used. Does motor functions for both cranial nerve number 9 and cranial nerve number 10. So it doesn't really know who it belongs to. It's used by both. Okay, so nucleus ambiguous. When you think about cranial nerve number 9, does anyone remember the motor function that it has, specifically voluntary motor? name of that small muscle that's involved in swallowing? It's the stylopharyngeal, yep. Stylopharyngeal muscle. That's going to be cranial nerve number 9. And as I said, cranial nerve number 10 also uses nucleus ambiguus for its functions. What are the voluntary motor functions for cranial nerve number 10? Perfect. Muscles of the soft palate. Muscles of the soft palate and pharynx and larynx. Okay, so nucleus ambiguus is used by both cranial nerves number 9 and number 10. And cranial nerve number 10 also has a parasympathetic function associated with it. The nucleus it uses for that parasympathetic function is here in green. Okay. And this nucleus is known as the dorsal motor nucleus. The dorsal motor nucleus is used by cranial nerve number 10 to accomplish its parasympathetic functions. What parasympathetic activity does cranial nerve number 10 have? Heart, lungs, and yep. Perfect. So it's the parasympathetic of heart, lungs, and GI tract. Okay, so I'm thinking about all the cranial nerves that we talked about that have motor function. These are all the nuclei that they're going to use. Okay, toward the end of the talk, we're going to start putting in the cranial nerves and using these different nuclei to show you where everything's coming from. But for right now, these are the motor nuclei. Let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break.